Board meeting for January 18th, 2022. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, upcoming meeting dates are February 24th, 2022 and March 29th, 2022. Board members, we have minutes from November 16th, 2021. Could I have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Okay, we'll do the roll call starting with Rich.
Richard Campbell.
Lori G.
John Eichman.
Ed Miyoshi.
Sarah Bledsoe.
And thank you. iPark, which was originally scheduled to have a public hearing, has been postponed to our next meeting of February 24th, 2022. The first item on our agenda is Forestier.
Hello, all.
Good evening.
So if you recall, the Forestier subdivision was a 3-lot subdivision off of Country Lane, Lomela area. We received our preliminary and final the same night, which was back in June. We've gone back and forth with the health department a little bit. We should be pretty wrapped up with that, with the exceptions. We still have to drill a test well. So to allow enough time to get that drilled, and we've got to test it and so forth, we're looking for an extension, two 3-month extensions from the original approval.
Got it. So it's 2 3-month extensions, Mike?
Right.
Which would take us to what
Would
date?
take us to June 8th, 2022.
Okay, got it. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Then I'll accept a motion to approve the extension to June.
So moved.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Next year for the Jetsons.
Be longer than that.
Good night. The next item on the agenda is Stormville Square. And tonight is our public hearing on the project. Could I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Brian, the floor is yours.
Floor is mine.
All right. Brian Stacosa, Dan Stacosa Engineering. I'll give a recap of where we have been and where we are now. This project was in front of the board, I think, since the late summer, early fall. And what the applicant would like to do, he owns 2 pieces at the intersection of Route 216 and Old Route 52. The existing, one of the existing parcels is vacant, and the other parcel contains the building where your Stormville Pizza is, a small retail plaza. And what he'd like to do is combine the 2 lots and ultimately put a climate-controlled building toward the rear. And in doing that, we developed a site plan. We were in front of the board, I believe in the fall, where we had a public hearing. We detailed the construction of a 21,000 square foot climate-controlled building, associated parking. There was some landscaping we provided, some lighting. There was also a retaining wall in the back because the hill, or the slope of the hill in the back, we were going to actually excavate out and set the building down in that area. The other part of this was we were going to realign the entrance to the site. We're proposing a new, larger site entrance. It was 2 lanes out, 1 lane in. And in addition, there is an entrance to the north that serves the existing plaza. We were showing a small improvement to that entrance. Ultimately, this area could possibly be served by water and sewer in the future. So there is also, there's always development potential that could be coming down the road. But as far as what we're proposing right now, this is the cap of what we're showing right now, just because we're limited by central services. we were asked at previous meetings about, is this the ultimate build-out for the climate-controlled building? There was always the potential to add on to the site when it was proposed at 21,000 square feet. As we looked at the numbers for infrastructure, construction of the wall, and the applicant did a small market analysis with their real estate consultants, and they felt the need that, you know, if we increase this to a 35,000 square foot building, it could support itself. With the increased, let's say, residential development coming down the pipe in the area. There's some larger home developments on the books that have been under review for a couple of years. And the applicant just thought with the addition of that use coming to this area, that this building could be supported by that use. So we had the public hearing in the fall. It was opened, it was closed. We had some comments from the neighbors. We felt that the positioning of the building toward the rear of the property, excavating it down and landscaping around it, that it would have a minimal impact on some of the residential neighbors around. This revision that we're showing right now at 35,000 square foot incorporates those concepts. To give you an update, since we were here last, we were asked to take a look at the retaining wall in the back and show some preliminary wall calculations on how we would go about the construction of that wall. Provided stability calculations and viability calculations. Town engineers come back with a couple of comments. Obviously, we'll provide additional information as we get more involved into the site plan approval process with bearing capacity, construction phasing, and how we construct that wall. But overall, what we try to do is incorporate as best we could since that last meeting some of the comments. We added some additional landscaping behind the retaining wall, something that's more manageable, like a taller grass, like a zebra grass type of screening. We added a chain link fence around the property line to kind of keep an added buffer between the property line and the retaining wall. We've also added notation to the plan. It is our intention to have motion activated lighting, so that during periods of non-use, it'll be security lighting, and when somebody does enter the site, it would illuminate for a period of time, again, to be more of a buffer to the residential component that surrounds the site. It has been difficult, but we have had a discussion with New York State DOT about the entrance, and that there could be the possibility of future development on this parcel if central water and sewer does become available. So with the entrance configuration we're showing was to try to do some smart engineering and hopefully some future planning, that there will be a use that will be to that site, and we will be back in front of you with another amended site plan if those services come through. One of the things we talked about was circulation through the site, and one of our proposals to them is to allow this entrance as we show it. We'd like to continue the use of the existing entrance and just modify it to an egress out of the site. This would facilitate truck deliveries to the back of the restaurant. It would allow them to come around the building and then left or right out. At such time that we're back in front of you for hopefully additional development on the site. When those services come around, we would abandon that access. We would landscape it, provide additional parking for that existing commercial use. Again, these are concepts we've thrown out to the DOT. They seemed receptive. We've given them additional documentation. So we continue to work with them. We do have a highway work permit application in with them. The thought process is, once we have a firm understanding of the entrance and the configuration that we mentioned about future abandonment, that we could fine-tune our drainage analysis. We could also incorporate any public comment received, and then obviously come in with a hard submission for a secret determination. As far as architecturals go, the architecturals remain the same as we presented before. The renderings are below. All it is the building is just stretched and enlarged to that 35,000 square foot footprint. Still one story, still climate controlled. I think that summarizes everything that we discussed at the last meeting and kind of gives a brief history of where we're at. That's it.
We talked a little bit too, Brian, I think, about fencing to keep neighbors and children, so forth, from rolling down the hill to the wall. Can you tell us a little bit about what your plans are there?
Yeah, what we did is we put a black chain link fence around the property line, and then between the property line and the retaining wall, we're going to have along the back of the residential homes, we'll have evergreen spaced in a tight configuration to provide a buffer. And then as you work your way up the hill, we'll have a series of several plantings of zebra grass. There's a larger area between, let's say on the eastern side of the property, between the retaining wall and the fence line. I think at our closest point, I believe we're 15 feet, maybe 18 feet, and then we expand further away from the property line. One of the bigger revisions that we made is we looked at the ITE manual for parking for this type of structure, and it is a relatively low impact use with respect to parking. So one of the concepts we incorporated from the last meeting was there were 10 spaces shown in the back of the building. We removed those spaces, we pushed the wall forward even more. That by pushing that wall forward, we actually reduced the wall height in that area. So I believe around the back side of that wall, or back side of that building, we're now in the 4 to 6 foot range, whereas before we were in the 10 to 12. So that's come down substantially by removing those parking spaces. We did request a waiver of 10 parking spaces in this latest revision, and then we highlighted that area that we removed on the site plan. If the board is looking for any additional barrier protection, fall protection, besides the chain link fence that we show, we will obviously provide that accordingly.
An emergency egress hasn't changed around the backside of the building by the movement of the wall, nothing?
Hasn't changed. We anticipate to move the larger tractor trailers through there. We'll fine tune, obviously, the turning template, but we can swing an aerial truck through there, fire department wise and tractor trailer wise. But we did show them in concept, and obviously we'll refine those as we move toward seeker determination.
And no change in the height of the structure with the increase in the square footage?
No, sir. The structure remains the same height, and then I think one of the other design elements we added to it is we did a cut and fill analysis to justify material being moved on the site. Just to refresh the board's memory, we did soil test that on site from the existing building all the way to the rear property line. In the center of the property, it's actually fine sand and gravel. And as you move up the hill, the material actually increases in density, so it's not as fine, but it is still of a gravelly mixture. So it's a well-draining material. And I think as part of our site plan development for the seeker process, we'll detail a phasing plan of how the wall is actually installed. We did do preliminary deep test pits at the edge of the wall in its, let's say, tallest portion. With the excavator that we did have on site, we were able to go down 12 feet straight down. The walls were able to hold themselves, so it is a pretty cohesive soil. It didn't collapse in on itself. So as you move your way up the site, the soil does improve as far as being able to excavate and remove. The approach to install these walls is to do a section at a time, not to clear all at once, have it exposed, but to actually do it in phased sections, and we'll provide that as part of seeker.
Brian, you mentioned you'd be open to having another barrier to keep people from approaching the chain link fence. I think we may have touched on like a split rail fence with mesh or something to keep kids, to deter them from coming down that hill. Does that make sense? Is that something you could do?
So you would like the split rail fence on top of the wall?
On top of the hill?
We show chain link right now, black chain link.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On top of the hill.
Okay.
So we had the black chain link at the top of the wall, anchored
Yes.
into the wall. There was questions regarding if people come into the property and they come down that slope toward the wall, could they get out? So we were asked actually to move that chain link off the top of the wall to actually line the property line. So what we did is that fence is now at the property line, then we have our screening, and then we have the wall. So if there's another barrier you'd like to add to the wall, the applicant is open to that.
Okay.
And at its highest point, what's the difference between one side and was it 12 feet or 10 feet or
The highest point is 13,
13?
and that's only for a small section. It's right at the corner when you turn the building. So we're going to go from, on each side, we're starting at 4 feet, and then we transition up into a 6, a small section's 10, small section's 12, and then the 14-foot section's probably only 15 feet, maybe, at that turn when you go around the building.
So with your new driveway coming in there, that's going up the hill to that building, right? What's going to happen when we have a big rainstorm and all that water comes down? Is there,
Right, so as part of our drainage design and what we show in concept with our grading is, again, we have to remember we do have a gravelly soil. We did soil tests out there, we didn't hit groundwater until we were actually 7 feet down where the existing building is. Elevation wise, you're probably talking just in the site alone after we grade it, probably 12 feet from finished grade to finished grade. So the water tables on the hillside, we found to be non-existent. So water is traveling through the soil. What we're going to do is we're going to have a cutoff swale on top of the retaining wall. The retaining wall will also have,
sorry, Brian, what I'm thinking about is this paved path you're going to have up there. That water is just going to come flying down.
catch basins at every intersection in the paved area. And then what we're doing is we're following DEC guidelines where we capture it, we treat it, and then we put it back into the ground via storm chambers. And that's what that larger chamber area is on the site. So we control it on site, and we also control it coming down to the wall area.
One more question about the new driveway. How close is that to where 216 makes the turn? Is that going to be a problem for people trying to make a left out of there? With people coming around that corner a little quickly?
We pushed it as far north, so we're actually right against the existing side where the billiards used to be.
Right.
So we've pushed it right up to that point. To give you reference, I think there's a telephone pole out there, so we're coming near that telephone. We pushed up as far as possible.
Okay.
And again, we didn't want to have an entrance onto Old Route 52. That's more of a residential component down there, so what we try to do is push it up the county road as far as we could.
Brian, you said sorry.
Go ahead.
You said you removed some of the parking spaces, because I think part of the comments back from Dutchess County were that they felt you were overparked. Did this change that parking?
The submission that the county received showed the spaces being removed. So I think their takeaway was, even with the 10 reduction, we're still overparked.
Okay.
I think if you look at ITE for this size building, they recommend 7 or 8 spaces.
Yeah.
And I think right now we're at 20, or 20, no, we're at 26, I believe. I think the code requires 1 space per 1,000. So originally we had 36. And then we backed it down to 25 by taking, or 26 by taking those 10 out in the rear.
Forgive me, I just can't see the smaller part of the plan. Did you remove the parking from the back? Is it all in the front now?
It's all in the front. And that forces your entry to the front too.
Okay,
Okay, and that's what I was going to ask. Are you still providing entry from the rear door, or just egress from the rear door?
Egress from the rear door, fire code.
Right.
We require 2 doors on the rear.
Okay.
so Brian, just piggybacking on that, I'm envisioning the way the site's going to work is that people are going to bring a truck in and want to park right at that entrance. And so I feel like I was looking at aerials of some other storage places around, and it looks like a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them have some sort of like loading zone where people, because it's just natural, they're going to come up and do it anyway.
Yep.
So I was wondering if you could either make a few of the spaces deeper, closer to the front of the structure, or create some sort of loading zone. Even if you had to get rid of spaces to do that, I think that you probably are overparked, because you typically don't have a run. I was also looking at aerials, and there's never anyone in the parking.
Never.
Um,
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I was thinking, maybe you just might want to think about that a little, because right now you have us loading across and people aren't going to do that. They're going to pull up and do that anyway, especially if no one's in the building watching them.
We could actually flip-flop it, I think, probably work better.
Yeah, something, just because because there's not gonna, I don't think there's anyone gonna be there, so I have a feeling that that's what's just gonna happen naturally, so you might as well make it as safe and efficient as possible. As far as the fence line, one of the part of the property that's behind the plaza is wooded, so the neighbor there won't even see the fence. The other part is not really very wooded, so I think maybe there might need to be some trees in front of that, and I know you're putting it right on the property line, so I need to come back a little bit and put some trees there, just to,
Push it back for maintenance.
yeah, to buffer that a little bit, not just the zebra grass.
Absolutely.
Maybe just a combination of but maybe include a little bit more landscaping there. And then, what about ADA ramps? How are you, or how is that working? I just wasn't able to figure that out from looking at it.
There is did we actually show a ramp on there? It was a layering issue with CAD, but we do have a ramp to come up into the building. There's a 6-inch drop on each side of the curb coming down, but it'll be detailed in our next submission, but we did provide that.
Okay, from the main entrance, it's, okay.
You may want to do that a little more extensively, especially for a building with this use, because a lot of people are going to probably have things on rollers they're trying to bring in.
Right.
Okay, what about signage?
Signage, we provided some signage on it, but we will provide more signage for directional. I think the biggest thing I was waiting for from a DOT standpoint was the entrance configuration, if they're going to go with our phased concept. But the site will have a no loading, will detail a no parking or temporary parking for like the loading zone in front of the building based upon the modification you talked about. As far as access around the building, it's still two-way. We're providing 24-foot paved. So there'll be full access around the building.
What about signage for the business itself? Are you putting a regular sign at the entrance on?
We do show a sign at the
Yeah.
entrance. It's on the northern side of our entrance as you're making your way out. There's a monument sign there.
Okay, is there any signage going on the building?
I'm assuming we will have signage on that.
If you could just maybe show where that might go, just so,
I don't know if our rendering showed it.
I don't think it does, but.
We'll update the rendering to show that.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments from our professionals?
Yeah,
Scott?
just highlight on some of the CPL comments, no particular order. The drainage, I guess, ties into the DOT system, so has there been a discussion with DOT on that?
Right, we did talk to them about tying to their system. We're going to provide a pre-post analysis that shows no adverse impact to their system. We're going to maintain the flow that goes to that system. That's why we're actually oversizing our storm chambers, so we won't impact that.
Is the idea to have something approved in writing prior to your approval, or you would rather have that as a condition? Because if it's a condition, you run the risk that if something doesn't work, you may wind it back here, so.
Based upon our conversations that we had this week with DOT, I feel like we would have something in writing prior to approval.
Prior to approval, okay. I noticed quite a bit of earthwork to be done mostly on site with only a net removal of 130 yards, so that does not require a special permit. And looking at the grading, I guess you're going to raise the elevation in the front. So can you speak to how that's going to be left? Is that permanent? Is that a temporary stockpile? Is it going to be mowed, grass, planted? What's that going to look like, and for how long is it going to be there?
So that's the object is to, again, we have a lot of sand and gravel on site, so the object is to move it toward the site. We're going to do it in like a benched configuration, so it'll be flat, and then so it's easy to be maintained. So it's not just a straight hillside. So there will be some benching toward it. In the front, I believe we show the front area to be elevated 3 to 4 feet, depending upon, there's some dips in the front. But the intention is to have it level, to have it grassed, and have it mowed and maintained. Obviously, we want to improve the character of the neighborhood and of the site. We want to draw visibility to the site too, because if we have existing businesses there, we'd like to support them with visibility. So it will be maintained. And we can add notation to the plan.
You'll just make it clear that I guess it could be a lawn area.
Yeah.
Right, lawn area, okay. Michelle, you'll take a look whether any additional landscapes needed. I think there was a comment about you may have mentioned it, Brian, about the bullnose prohibiting the trucks from getting into that. You're going to clean that up a little bit, okay. There was a comment here about the fire truck riding over the lip of the curb, I guess, behind the building and possibly into the retaining wall. Have you looked at that?
Yeah, we looked at it. I ran the turning template a little bit tight in that area there, but I did rerun it. We do have sufficient room to clear the
Check
aerial
that.
truck. Yeah.
Okay,
It'll be updated in our plan set.
okay. And the only thing, I think they were looking for a little more detail on the retaining wall, as you mentioned, to make sure it's not going to encroach into the neighboring property during construction.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments before we open it up for public comment? If not, we will open up now for public comment. Any member of the public who would like to speak for or against the project, please come up, sign in. It appears that we have no one who would like to speak. Thank you very much. Okay. Anything else from any of the board members?
I just have a comment. So from a long-term planning perspective, I see this lot and this parcel being a really key property and the really central part of the hamlet of Stormville in and of itself. There's obviously a demand for future growth. I mean, we have different proposals of close to 1,000 houses being, proposed across Stormville. So people obviously want to be here. I think we have an incredible opportunity as a town to look at the hamlet of Stormville and to consider the opportunity that we have for growth and for economic development. I don't see this property, this proposed use, as the highest and best use for this cornerstone lot. And I would love if we had an opportunity, we could take a minute to kind of look at, from a perspective of long-term planning, the hamlet of Stormville as a whole and how this parcel and this property fits into that. Because while this is a major improvement over what is currently there, I think we have a huge opportunity to set the stage for what is to come with all of this proposed new development in the area.
I agree. I live in Stormville. I live a mile and a half from this site. I'd love to have more retail and a bigger commercial presence, and I'd like to see it grow in the area. I think the one thing that really prohibits commercial development in this town is the lack of central services. New York State is very strict in their public water supplies. So in order for any future development on this site, you're looking at a pretty heavy public water supply improvement for the well. So this well is going to, if a larger store was to come in here, that's a heavy water user. You have to find a place to put the septic in the ground. Even though you have great soils, the big problem is the well. Public water supply, just to give an idea of how these things work, you need 200 foot of control around a well. 200 foot of control around a well swallows up an acre right there. Within 100 feet of that well, you can't have any impervious, you can't have any stormwater. So that you just took the area of the building plus and wiped it off any kind of development possibilities. So I agree. I love to see Stormville grow, and I'm sure people would like to see the town of East Fishkill grow. The first step in that growth is central services. And I'd love to come back. I'd love to charge the applicant more money to come back here and show a nice Trader Joe's there. I'd benefit from it. I'd love to see that happen. But until that public improvement comes around the corridor, we're stuck in a development holding pattern with a use that isn't using any water. And that's why we're presenting this. And that's why there's no bathrooms in there. We're keeping the rental office in the front building. When you start to play around with that public water supply component for a well, you lose a ton of development possibility. So we do understand your concerns. And what we're trying to do to cater to that development is we're trying to plan this entrance. We'd love to open arms to have a big store come in there, but we'd like to plan an entrance to accommodate that. Let's do it once and let's do it right. That's why we're coming with this phasing concept with the entrance. You know, we'll do the bigger entrance, we'll allow for deliveries through the back of the existing building, and then at such time that a bigger store comes in and we're back in front of you, we'll close that entrance off, landscape will provide additional parking and screening. So I do hear your concerns.
Do you see this building as ever being adapted into a different use, or do you see it in perpetuity as self-storage?
I see it as storage.
On that note, as far as the parking, if you can come back with ITE rates that show that you don't need as much parking, then by all means, why don't you do that? Because if you are eventually going to put something in the front of the site, which we hope you will, you might need some of that area, as much area as possible for parking, or you're going to be limited by the size of the site or what's remaining at this point. So I think if it's possible, maybe show some land banked parking and get rid of some of the, you know, tell me what the ITE rate is. I know it's pretty low.
I think
And
it's 0.2 per 1,000 square foot, and that gets you to like 7.5 parking spaces for the entire building. I thought I included, there was a page from ITE, I thought I included it with my memo, response memo, but I'll get it to you.
Okay, great. And then if you could show maybe some of the parking land banked instead,
Absolutely.
that we can, then the planning board could sort of decide whether or not they feel like they need to build that parking now or not. Because I think, you know, just looking at the site right now, it's narrow, it's long, but they may, if you were to have what I would hope you would have, which is what I've wanted on that site, is a neighborhood grocery of some sort, you'll need parking. And that's going to be a limiting factor for you.
Right, you need parking, you need the ability to get a truck in and out of the site. And again, that's why we're gearing toward this bigger improvement. I mean, that entrance compared to a standard commercial entrance is substantially cost-wise, it's larger. It's a larger improvement, there's more drainage involved, and the applicant's willing to try to do smart planning in hopes that we can attract business to this hamlet.
Ryan, is there a natural gas available here?
I don't think natural gas comes through there right now. I think it comes down Greenhaven through the prison.
All right,
I
so
don't think it
it's
comes
a
through.
pretty large structure that's going to have to be heated, so, you know, I think some consideration should be given on, you know, if you're going propane or you're going, you know, oil, but is that all of a sudden going to pop up on the site to factor that in? Give some thought to that.
For the existing building, since we don't have any water in the building, we don't have any bathrooms in the building, office will be up front. So as far as heating the building, it'll be in the mid-50s to 60s in that area during the winter. So we do show heat pumps throughout the site. Off to the side, we showed them on the north and to the south at the parking areas on the side of the building. We also showed some bollards around them for protection.
All right, so you have that covered. Yeah. So there's no propane tanks going to be required? Okay.
Not yet. Well, we're still running some numbers, but we did make accommodations for where those utilities would be. If we do decide to switch to propane, they would be off to that north and south side of the building.
So you'll show that where they potentially, or dig a little deeper into that, just so it doesn't become an issue later on? Sort that out now? Okay.
Okay, are there any objections to closing the public hearing?
I think in our prep meeting, we were talking about needing New York State DOT weigh-in, but it looks like that Brendan got that from his memo, right, Scott? Looks like Brendan heard from DOT on the access that he was waiting for.
I believe so. I know I met with DOT, you know, many months ago, and, you know, initially they were okay with that location, so they didn't have any strong, they wanted that one existing one to be a right out. I think the one comment that I did see, though, was reconfiguring it to actually limit it to be a right turn, that people can't cheat and make the left. So that's something you'll have to clean up on the plan.
Right, and that's what our negotiation that we had on Tuesday is to finesse that.
Right.
Okay.
One last thing. So Michelle, the retaining wall is between 10 and 14 feet at its highest point. Is there anything in our code that requires a fence along the top of it? I know there's a chain link along the...
Yeah, over 4 feet. You have to have a rail over 4 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll provide it. We had it in the last iteration, and we were asked to push it back, but we can
But that's what I'm clarifying, so the chain
Okay.
link is well off the wall itself, so there should be another fence along the wall?
Well, it can be set back as long as it ties in and closes the loop, so to speak. That somebody can't just climb up on that wall in front of the fence. So, I mean, I didn't get into all the details to see if it closes the loop, so to speak, but the idea is to prohibit anybody from walking up there and being able to fall off, so.
It sounded like you said it's like 15 to 18 feet from the wall itself, right? The chain link is a fairly good distance from the actual wall.
Yes, at its closest point, you're probably 15 feet, and then it tapers, it gets larger.
They'd have to tie it in somehow on the end to, again, prohibit somebody from walking up in front of that fence. That's the whole idea.
Yeah. We can certainly provide that. That's an easy detail. We'll just use a detail we had at the last submission. We'll tie it in.
Okay. Okay, anything else? If not, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing.
So, so moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is AZ Hopewell LLC.
Yes, sure. Hello, good evening. How
Good
are you?
evening.
My name's Kurt Hutter. I'm with AZ Hopewell LLC, and we're the developer and equitable owner of the property. And I'm quickly going to turn this over to Karen from Bowler Engineering to kind of walk through the site. But I thought, since this is our first public meeting, I'd give a quick 2-minute introduction on our proposed use. For those not familiar with the property, it's the redevelopment of the old William Tell hardware store, the one that burned down. And our proposed use is Autozone auto parts store. Autozone is a Fortune 500 company. They have over 6,000 stores in the United States. We are as I mentioned, we're the equitable owner. We will also be the landlord. Autozone is our tenant. They do not franchise, so every location is corporately owned or corporately run. It's strictly a retail use. They do not do any auto service. Other than that, our proposed, Karen, as I mentioned, is going to walk through the plan itself. I just want to point out that if you want to get a sense of the building location on the site, the building is 7,400 square feet, which is smaller than the old hardware store. And the building is actually being situated within the footprint that is still there. So if you wanted to go out and get a sense of where the building's going to be located, it's going to be shifted around within the footprint since it's smaller, but it'll fit within where the old footprint is. And that's it. I'll be making myself available for any questions as you go through the presentation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, I'm Karen Majanowski from Bowler Engineering, and as Kurt described, you can see the existing conditions that are on site today with this aerial exhibit that's here, and this helps give you a sense of the site layout that we're proposing. So the former building sat here, which is clearly visible by the building pad that remains, with the access and parking lot to Route 82. And going to the proposed site plan, you can see how we're really matching that layout that's there today. The parcel's about 0.7 of an acre in size in the B2 zoning district, and the building that we're proposing is about 7,400 square feet. We're proposing to reuse the existing access that's there, as well as hold the existing edge of pavement along the front of the site for our parking lot. We're proposing 21 parking spaces, which we feel is sufficient to support the store. So we are requesting a waiver for reduction of parking for that parking count. Also, in looking at the existing developed site that was there, there were some nonconformities that will remain with our proposed redevelopment. So I'd like to point those out. The side setback for the building that was there along this side here will remain a nonconformity. We are improving it by pushing it a little further from the property line, but that is one that's there. And as I mentioned, we're holding that front edge of pavement and parking for the parking lot, which is an existing nonconformance with the parking setback. We are leaving the green space and the sidewalks that are out front, so the streetscape would be matched in the proposed conditions. And then lastly, the maximum impervious coverage that's there is non-compliant and would be the case with the redevelopment as well. As far as site circulation goes, we are, there would be a tractor trailer for deliveries, so we are working with our adjacent neighbor over on the eastern side here for a cross connection, which is shown back up here. So the truck, as it enters, would never have to back in or out of the site. It could just continue with a forward movement so that it goes to the back unloading area of the store where our trash also is, and can continue straight through to the adjacent parcel. And again, we're working on that cross access with the neighbor for that. So that would line up right back here with this drive aisle that exists to allow people access back to the rest of the plaza that's there, including the deliveries. Also, we submitted the architecture for Autozone, which is this plan here. This is pretty much the typical architecture that's there. It may or may not look familiar with their color scheme. And in looking at that and looking at the area and some initial feedback that we received, we wanted to enhance that a little and kind of soften the look. So we did bring another option this evening for that. So as you saw in the previous, there was a lot of white and gray tones. This version here has a lot more neutrals on the building. So what was white and gray is now tans and browns. We've also added stone to the columns, to the vertical, and then the horizontal below the storefront as well, that's there. So I know this is new to the town and the board this evening, but we did want to put a good faith effort into enhancing that architecture to try to fit in with the character of the community. So with that, I will turn it over to the board.
Okay, questions or comments from board members? I'll go ahead and start, and I, for one, appreciate your attempt at a good faith effort to change the architecture, but I don't see a significant difference. And the one thing that we have in mind here is that this is really kind of the entrance to Hopewell Junction Business District. It's really an important location, and I would encourage you to take another look at a complete different look at the architecture for this.
Are there any certain types of materials or color schemes or examples we could look at in the town?
I think something more neutral than what we've done with the oranges and so forth. And beyond that, I'm not sure. I think what I might recommend is spending a little bit of time with our professionals, Michelle in particular, and where you could spend a few thoughtful moments in a meeting, taking a look at that.
Certainly.
And probably the ARB, I would think,
Yeah.
would have to chime in.
Correct, yeah.
Certainly.
Good, because that would definitely stand out compared to what's in town currently. It's absolutely be very bright there.
Well, across the street is a very, very traditional style building. Next to it would be a traditional kind of 70s style architecture in terms of lots of brick and like very soft design. This is very modern, very bright. Even the more muted one, I would have to agree, is extremely like bright and modern and just doesn't fit into any of the traditional characteristics of the town, which, I mean, some probably deserve some updating as well, but this looks very just out of place, it kind of sticks out versus kind of blending in with what is there now.
Okay, we can look at some other options and modifications. As far as their signage and branding, I can say that that probably won't change, but from a building standpoint, we can look at other options.
Okay.
Like the Dunkin' Donuts has a bright orange thing too, but it doesn't stand out like that does.
And they
Understood.
found their way through different means to be able to adapt to probably a tiny bit more traditional. And I think as stated, this being the, initial corridor into the town, we're really looking for a more, I would feel, traditional feel or something that was, not that the building's not an inviting piece, but I think that it's very, the louder colors are definitely would need to be re-evaluated and adjusted. And maybe even some of it's a very jagged architecture. A lot of very, decisive corners and sharp angles. I think that we would probably like to see something a little more softened in that way, not just colors alone.
Okay, yeah, we'll look at, that's their typical layout. That's how pretty much all of their stores are, but again, we'll look at things to mute that a little.
Okay.
Michelle, how does the new proposed road coming through there, how does that play into this?
Well, if all goes well, the road would run alongside where you see the trees right now. It would run
Right.
from Fishkill Road down to connect to 82. Where
Right.
there would be a roundabout. So that building would really be a 360-degree building, essentially. Like, you would see it from all sides.
Right.
Which is why it's very important visually. And the way it fits on the site is important. I know that we met with you in your pre-application and sort of mentioned that to you and explained to you what was going to be happening on the site, hopefully. And really a connector for the new residential development, the Hopewell Glen development into the site, and the rail trail. So, so it's very important to the town that be a visually appealing building. And also have the character of the Hamlet district that we're hoping to improve upon, really. And then I just have a couple questions on your presentation. You said I know you need a...
Just one question on the road before we get
Sure.
off that. What is the status of
So
construction?
Well, we're waiting to hear back we applied for a CMAQ TAP grant, and we're waiting to hear back on that, and they're very late. I don't know why they haven't announced them yet. So, but we've gotten good indications on this. This is the second time we've applied, and we had some really good feedback the first time, but it went to a more regional project. But now, with all the state investment in the rail trail and Amazon and all the things happening here, we suspect that we may be a little higher in the priority list than we were the first time. But just back to, you said what is the actual side setback for, and the parking setback that you aren't meeting?
The side setback for the building that was there is 5.7 feet, and we're proposing 7.2.
Okay, so, and I don't know, Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the building burned down, it wasn't rebuilt, so they would still need a variance for their side setback because they're not, I don't believe there's any variances granted on that site. And they don't.
I believe a variance is going to be required for this.
And also for whatever's not meeting zoning, because you don't get to, it was pre-existing non-conforming, but because it burned down, it wasn't built within the amount of time. It was 1 year.
Is it a 1 year? Is it
Yeah.
a 1 year limit? Yeah.
Okay, so the side setback and the impervious coverage,
Anything that you don't meet zoning for currently would have to get a variance from the zoning board.
okay, even if we're not touching the front with the parking setback?
Yeah, and what I can do is if you want to call me tomorrow, we can go through I can go through with you and kind of help you figure that out.
Okay.
Okay.
Michelle, what is the side setback? I didn't know we had.
So this is a B2 district, and so, yeah, there's a side setback, yeah. So I think it's 10,
I'm sorry, I thought it was B1.
yeah,
Yeah, it's 10 feet,
it's 10 feet.
so we're close.
But also being that it was pre-existing non-conforming, now that they're going to be building a brand-new structure, doesn't everything have to conform to code?
Yes,
Or
Or
obtain variances.
get a variance.
Understood.
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're all on
And
the
just
same
to piggyback on that comment, obviously, you don't want to take bad site design in original building and carry that forward. I
Right,
mean, there was
yeah.
some bad functioning of the hardware store, the parking lot in particular didn't function well.
Yeah.
So, obviously, we want to try to make it work better. It's a little different because it's different use, and it's probably not going to have quite the same issues, but we still want to make sure that we're cognizant of and creating better site design in general. Which leads me to my next question. If you can't get the easement from Pizza Village, can the truck still function on the site?
Yeah, we'll double check that, but the truck should be able to pull forward to back in. If not with the existing layout, then we would widen the pavement so that it could.
Okay,
Well, it's not just an agreement with Pizza Village, but Pizza Village will be giving up parking spaces.
yes, and the Pizza Village would have to come back for a site plan amendment as well.
They have to come back for a site plan
Yeah, you
approval.
both would.
Yeah, there's, I think, 3 spaces that are impacted in that area.
Because when they're busy, they're packed when they're busy, so. Where would that truck now, if it goes through that, if they remove the 3 parking spaces, that becomes now a through road, so anybody even from Acme Plaza can cut through there, right? And they can cut through to Acme, right?
Yep, it would all be connected.
What keeps the truck from, you said it's gonna go straight, the truck, when it goes through there?
Yes,
That's not the plan I have. The plan I have showed it coming out the Pizza Village entrance.
yes. Yeah, now that we evaluated that and where the cross-access makes sense the most, the current truck turn is this one, which will be reflected on the next set of plans.
What keeps a truck from trying to make that turn onto that comes straight out?
There's nothing there now, so if signage,
Well, there's
Or
nothing there
even-
because there's parking spaces. It doesn't exist. So I'm saying if you open that up, you remove those parking
Yep.
spaces. What prevents a truck from trying to take a shortcut and come straight through that parking lot?
we could put signage for that.
Because if a tractor trailer
Wide enough?
gets in there and whatever, and it's going to block up the whole Pizza Village entrance there, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a non-starter,
So, there-
as represented in your first submission.
understood, yeah, so there's room, I mean, for the truck to park on site, obviously.
No, I mean, if it,
He's saying
your
full
first
road.
submission had them coming out the Pizza Village
Right.
entrance, which to me was
Yeah, we would not do
Yeah.
that.
which was
Yeah,
bad,
yeah, that's
horrible.
why it's actually not on that.
So what prevents a truck on his own from doing that? That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Is there anything
so
that
we-
prevents a truck from doing that?
I'll address this because it's really only an AutoZone truck that would have any reason to do that, right? Well, I would imagine that because I think what it showed was coming in the Pizza Village and doing a loop like this. Is that
Or
correct?
even vice versa.
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
That's a two-way.
Okay,
So, with AutoZone being the company that it is, it also controls all its deliveries, so they don't contract out to a third party for deliveries. And deliveries for stores typically only happen once a week. So it is almost once a week, it's very low frequency. And they control the delivery hours of the truck to be off-peak hours. And they can, obviously, they manage the truck service, so you're not relying on some third party to do it. So I totally agree that AutoZone, we do not want AutoZone trucks coming through the Pizza Village. If we are successful in getting this cross-access, I would want them to go straight out. And/or do what Karen said and just circulate within the property itself. So whether it's a restriction on this but AutoZone, we can make
sure.
Yeah, I don't know how you police it from a practical standpoint. In all due respect, we've had a lot of applicants come and say we control trucks and they're only going to come certain hours, and things being what they are, they don't always follow those hours.
And you're not connecting, I don't think, you're not connecting the bottom access to, yeah, okay.
So with respect to the auto parts business, there are 2 other auto part businesses less than 1 mile away. Royal Auto Parts, I think, is the one that's down toward Fishkill, and then there's another one, like, right down the street at the gas station. I would be very concerned about the ability for those businesses to survive and not be totally pushed out really quickly with this addition. And then I have to wonder what happens to those buildings and what comes of those businesses when they're pushed out.
Yeah, so we feel that this can be supported here. The industry's only increased since everything we've been through the past couple of years. And this is a market they feel would be supported, and it's an allowed use. So all of those things combined, we can't control what happens off of our site, obviously, but being it's allowed use, they found this a good reuse for the property.
Can I just clarify, are you saying you identified a gap in availability, or just that this is a location that would provide potential the customer volume you look for?
That it would provide customer volume for them.
Could we talk again about parking? How many parking places are required and how many do you have?
So we have 21 proposed and 30 required by code.
And would you be trying to work with Pizza Village for cross parking easements or anything to provide for those additional spaces or not?
Not at this time. We feel 21 is sufficient for this particular use.
Okay.
Does that include employee parking?
Yes.
How many employees will be on at any given time?
Somewhere between 3 and 4 at peak.
And on average, based on the scale of this building and other projects that you have, how many parking spaces at those that are conforming in other areas compared to what you have here? So let's say, obviously you're only going to have the 21 spaces. What is at other sites that are of this magnitude?
Yeah, so we as a company have developed over 25, approximately 30 Autozone stores within a few state area. We're based out of Pennsylvania, so Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Delaware, Maryland. It's a very low traffic use, very low parking use, and 21 is sufficient. And we can show you some details on that. Obviously, AutoZone doesn't want to be short of parking either.
But the question, I guess, is, again, in other scenarios, how many parking spots are at the other stores as opposed to here, what you're proposing?
There are plus and minus. We're doing one in Delaware that has 14 parking spots.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from board members or professionals? So I think, am I correct, the next step would actually be zoning board
Yeah.
for,
Referral to the ZBA would be the next step.
okay, and does that require a motion?
I believe a motion should be made by this board.
Okay, so that would be the next step before coming back to us. Could I have a motion to refer the applicant to the ZBA?
Just real quick, I'm sorry.
I'm
just
sorry?
One more thing about the circulation, I'm just thinking, so if you go through behind the Pizza Village parking lot, you're going to tie into that service road. So speaking of easements and agreements, that's not a town road. I'm sure you're aware of that. So I don't know, MC, I don't know whether I need to get a sign off from the Unity Plaza.
I think the ZBA,
That's their road.
right, I think overall as far as parking and circulation, I think for any sort of parking shortage, if you have some sort of cross easement agreements, I think that'll be something the ZBA will take a look at. And I think they may also look at the access just because the parking is short as well.
So,
Talking about physically connecting to the service road owned by Unity Plaza.
Oh,
I don't know if that's as of right for them to do that, or if they need to get a sign off from
have you spoken
Unity.
to Unity Plaza?
we'll confirm that, if anything beyond to get to that road is needed for
Right, 'cause
cross-access.
that's not a town road, so.
Yeah,
Understood.
yeah.
So to confirm, I know you're going to make a motion for ZBA, but we were hopeful to get a waiver for parking. Is that headed toward a variance as well?
That's going for a variance as well.
Yes. And we'd still would like to see the analysis on that as well, per our previous conversation. So with that, if it's okay, I'll accept a motion to refer the applicant to the ZBA.
So, second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our next item on the agenda is Global Foundries. Oh. I'll ask. Yes. Gotcha. Okay. That tripod is a hot mess, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's not.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Tim McCara. I'm the site electrical engineer for Global Foundries in Fishkill. I'm here to talk about a new proposed emergency generator for our fab building 323A, which is located on the site, as you can see, pretty much in the center of the site, right adjacent to West Drive. The proposed location of the generator is on the east side of the building, on the north end. The generator would not be visible from West Drive. It's basically behind the building. That generator would be a 3-megawatt generator that is a life safety purpose generator. It's a 3-megawatt unit. About a year and a half ago, we came here for a proposal to install a 2-megawatt unit for our building 320B. This is basically the same unit, just slightly bigger than the other one.
Okay.
As you can see, the generator would sit outside the north end of the building. The building itself is like 70 feet high. That is an existing exhaust stack. With this generator, the generator sits on the ground outside in the grass area. The exhaust stack comes up the side of the building and goes to new 2 exhaust fans that are mounted to the roof. Those fans are lower than the existing stacks, of which you wouldn't be able to see those from West Drive either. Basically, they're lower than the existing stacks in the facility.
Did you say it sits on the grassed area, or that you're going to pave?
What we're going to do is we're going to put a concrete pad on the grass area. We have to take 2 trees down. Instead of putting a guardrail, we're going to use, boulders instead to make it more aesthetic. And basically a lot greener too, by using boulders.
And does the generator operate on natural gas?
No, this is going to be a diesel generator because of the size. Gas generators aren't that efficient at 3 megawatt. The generator will be used, we start it up once a month for just a maintenance procedure, and we do a load bank test on it twice a year.
Any other questions? Any
The
comments?
question I have, I know it's a very large generator, but is there such a thing as like a quiet run or
This is,
enclosure?
the enclosure was specially designed to be like 71 dB at like 5 feet.
Okay,
It's got, if you look at the one for 320B, it's basically the same unit,
okay.
constructed the same.
That's pretty much a
Financial
standard
pen.
thing to make sure that we have the quiet, enclosure
is.
or whatever's available, okay. So it's really just a minor amendment to their site, so.
Right.
And fire protection extend into that compartment?
Yes, there's fire detection in it. It's connected to our site alarm system also. And this will be, like I said, provide life safety services for Building 323A. That's what it's designed for.
Okay.
Okay.
Just for clarification for the resolution, is Engineering Ventures the name of the company that actually did the site plan in the PowerPoint? Because I need to make sure that we're
Yes, it was noted in the site plan, amended where the generator is.
Yep, okay, so it was prepared by Engineering Ventures, and the only thing I'm gonna need from you before we read the resolution is the dates of the, because I couldn't read it on the PowerPoint presentation, I wasn't able to look the date when the plan was revised.
The date, the generator is supposed to be here in June of this year, operational by probably November this year.
And I'm,
I think you mean the
Date of the plan.
yeah, the date of the plans that you're gonna, because I'm gonna, yes, because I'm gonna ask you to submit those to me.
Yeah, it was December.
December, okay, so when, you can give it to me afterwards, just that we don't have the date right this second, so we just need to
I'll just
confirm
look at the plan, it's on
it. Okay,
there.
perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to read a resolution. Resolution of amended site plan approval, name of site plan, Global Foundries, FAB 10B 323A emergency generator. Name of applicant, Global Foundries US Inc., location 2070 Route 52, Hopewell Junction, New York. Whereas the applicant applied for amended site plan approval to install a new emergency generator at Fab 10B 323A, and whereas the proposed generator would be 158 inches, 13 feet by 640 inches, 53 feet, and would be located at the northeast corner of B 323A, and whereas the action is considered a Type 2 action under seeker for which a coordinated review is not undertaken, and whereas the planning board has determined that the project would not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts, and whereas the board finds that the application for an amended site plan meets the requirements for minor site plan approval, now therefore be it resolved that the amended site plan application for the above project as represented on a map entitled Global Foundries Fab 10B 323A Generator and B323A UPS Project, prepared by Engineering Ventures PC and dated as of a date in December of 2021, I assume, is hereby approved, and we'll fill in that date later. Be it further resolved that within 5 business days of the adoption of this resolution, the chair or other duly authorized member of the planning board shall cause a copy of this resolution to be filed with the town clerk and a copy sent to the applicant owner. We'll take a roll call vote. Can I first have a motion to approve that resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, and roll call, Lori G.
Aye.
Ed Miyoshi.
Aye.
Sarah Bledsoe.
Aye.
Richard Campbell.
Aye.
John Eichman. I'm an aye. It passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Our last item on the agenda, and we'll give you just a moment, but will be Stormville Landing. It's a sketch plan, so first discussion.
I hope not.
I hear that.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name's Anthony Mirando. I'm an attorney with Cuddy and Fader, and I'm here tonight with the Stormville Landing project team. Never like to speak when people are moving, so we're just going to try to see if we can connect first, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Great.
Yes, take your time.
Thank you.
That's kind of cool. I didn't know we had to pull out a drawer. Fancy. Yeah.
Secret compartment. Here's somebody using that book.
Not wide enough for your laptop, but it's there.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah, the planning didn't go all the way.
It has wings.
The things you learn.
We did bring a board just in case. We never rely on only technology, right?
Good for you.
It's right here.
Got it here. I've also got it on a jump drive.
Okay, so perfect. What you're gonna do, see the IP address at the top, you're gonna go onto your internet and type that in.
I'm not hooked up to your network yet.
Okay, so you're just gonna go, you'll be guest, and it's a great place to live.
I like that.
Yes.
So Lori, did you say you couldn't get your car started? So did somebody drive you here?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
My husband had to scramble.
Son of a gun. Was it battery or who knows? Is that right? Bummer.
It almost started, and then it didn't start.
It's been so cold the last few days. Your car,
Couple more degrees of temperature, it'll start
yeah,
right up.
does your car sit down?
It's been sitting probably since the last planning board meeting, because we use the other car. We don't,
Yeah.
I rarely drive my car.
So you don't even start it. Oh, the poor car. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's completely user error, not the car's fault.
Yeah, good luck with that. Luckily, it doesn't take long to install a new battery if you need it. Cool.
He's on his way to go buy a battery. After he dropped me off.
Thumb drive easier?
Yeah, somebody else is already connected. I've got it on here.
Well, we'll introduce ourselves before we get the materials up. Again, my name's Anthony Mirando. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Peter Wintermantel. I'm an architect with REA Siegel Architect.
I'm Joe Modafferi with JMC, Civil Engineers, Landscape Architects, Site Plan for the project.
Of course, the applicant.
Nathan Kahn, applicant, contract vendor for Stormville Airport.
Yeah, we'll throw that up.
Just bear with me for a second, I gotta. Okay. Just pull it up there. Just X out some stuff so it doesn't cause any problems. Just coming. It's gonna make a loud noise, probably. Okay. Code is.
Get close.
Just make sure it's in. Going this way? There we go. Which one? This one here? Just
So close.
It's very, something screwy because it's not connecting very well. It's all right, I think it's going to come. There it
There we go. Yeah, I was going to say.
It's going to open 8 times.
Yeah, probably.
All right.
Yeah, so let's do this.
Well, interestingly, I don't really need that to speak, so I can. Again, thanks. We're very. I think we're. Yeah, sure.
It's coming up. It's coming into full screen mode. It's just going to be a little slow, I think it looks like tonight.
We are very pleased to be here tonight. Thank you very much for having us and for being invited to come and give a preliminary discussion and introduce this new proposal for the Stormville Airport. As you probably all know by way of background, this is an existing 150-plus acre property with frontage on 216. I'm sure you're all more familiar with it than I am. The property was rezoned a couple years back into CRD, the Conservation Residential Development. And the applicant that's coming before you now is proposing something that is incredibly consistent with what the intent of that new zoning was. Just by way of background, again, that zoning was to encourage a variety of housing types, to serve a variety of income bases within the community, include associated and integrated retail and personal service use, and to include a multitude of active and passive recreation components to serve the community and create a village type atmosphere. All those are included in what you'll see as part of the preliminary concept for the Stormville Landing project. Just so you know, by way of process, we haven't formally filed an application with the planning board yet. There's been some initial discussions just to get some feedback from the town, their staff and members, so that when we do file, we have a good concept of what everyone will be looking for. As part of that discussion, it was suggested that we come and give an introduction to you, for us, and for the project, and work collaboratively going forward to the extent that we can, and you'll have us. Tonight, I think what the team wants to do is just start the conversation with respect to the general concepts that go along with this. And we may not have answers to all your questions for the project, but we'll certainly be taking them under advisement and incorporating as we go forward. But tonight, again, is to start that discussion. So I'd like to bring up Nathan to walk you through some of the high-level concepts and what the vision for the project is.
Just let me know when I need to switch.
I'd like to share my vision for Stormville Airport. It's a unique site. There are very few developable sites left anywhere, and to have a site that's not full of rock and not full of wetlands, Army Corps, DEC, et cetera, that has a clear, large open space that can be developed is really unique. And the goal here, East Fishkill is a town. It's a town where, it has a tremendous amount of town-owned recreation, and people come together, and that's really the vision of this site. You can see the 3 different colors. I'll start on the left hand of the site. My development history was mostly in Connecticut, and I was one of the pioneers who did active adult projects. In many towns, I was the first one in the early 2000s to get active adult projects approved, and now they're throughout the Northeast and throughout the United States. The houses to the left of the concept plan, that's the active adult community, and in an active adult community, the majority of the residents have to be over the age of 55, and we intend to have 20% who are over the age of 45. Those are people who are selling big houses. The children are gone. They no longer need their residences, and they're looking to live in a community of like-minded adults. The beauty of this project, however, different than most active adult projects, like the Big Toll project in Wappinger Falls, the Regency of Wappinger Falls, is that most active adult projects have only people 55 and over and some 45 and over. This is a village, this is a community. It has all ages. When you go across the site, we start with the active adult, but we then go into, when we pass the active adult, the middle of the project, the blue houses, those are a new type of housing which is becoming much more popular in the United States, which is multi-generational or next-gen housing. In multi-generational housing, you have a primary house, a family, and they're usually one of two types. It's a family that has an older parent or parents who they want to be near them, but not living in the exact same structure. Or, also very common, particularly if you look at what's happened to rents everywhere, but particularly in, I think, in the Hudson Valley, gone up dramatically, and you have children who've gone off to college and are coming home. They're not yet ready to get out on their own. So you end up with having either a minimum of 2 generations, but possibly 3 generations living in the same home. And that continues into the right side of the project, which is for starter families, traditional starter families, homes that are designed for starter families. So each part of the project, it spans from someone buying their first house, and usually, in the active adult industry, we say that person's buying their last house. So it's their first house, their middle house, their last house. But the goal was, because you have that mass amount of acreage that's not interrupted, was to build in a unique amount of amenities and connect all 3 projects. I don't know how well you can see it, but there's a walking trail that goes straight from one project through to the other. You surely can't see that when you have, one of the reasons active adult usually is done as a separate project is because a person who's 70 or 80 moving into his last home, he doesn't want children running around in the street in front of him. He surely doesn't want cars. So the site is designed that the active adult on the left has a man-gated entrance. I don't know if you can see there's a small building. That building is for storage, for packages, and it also is, which I think is very unique for a project like this, it has a home for someone who would be an on-site. Like in a city where you have a building has a super, there'll be someone who would be living there. The community is giving him a home, and that adds security, it adds comfort. Nobody goes, most of the shopping we do today is through Amazon or someone else delivering packages, and people are worried what happens to the packages. We don't necessarily want all those Amazon, trucks driving through the community. So there's a storage room which could work for all 3 parts of the community. But the amenities, it's hard to see, but the amenities, so in the middle, you can't drive from the other 2 communities into the active adult. There's an emergency access gate, and you can walk there, but you can't drive there. So the community is connected, but yet the active adult has a certain sense of privacy. So the amenities, you have a putting green. The putting green is in the active adult section. The children's playground is in the starter home section. And then there'll be pools in each section. That's another thing which we've discovered over the years. Active adult do not want to, when they're going to the pool or going to their clubhouse, they don't want to share it with children. Nothing against children, but they're not interested in having little kids running around in their clubhouse or pool. So they have their own, and then some of the amenities are shared. We do also show, which the zoning allows, 1% of the acreage for commercial use, and when we met with staff, we were discussing possibly not having that and having an amenity that would be available both to the town and to the people in the community. So that the goal here is to create a little village, and it works. Our engineer will explain what the area in the back is, but I think for the price range we'll be in, there's Silo Ridge. I don't know if you know what Silo Ridge is in Amenia. Tom Brady lives there, but the average person there is worth about $500 million, and they have crazy amenities and their own chefs and all of that. But other than Silo Ridge, I don't know a project which has more packed into it, than what we're designing. And again, because you have that flat, unique site to work with.
Okay, again, my name is Peter Wintermantel. I'm an architect. I'm just going to go through a couple of slides here just to give you an overall feel of some of the units. So the units are designed with a modern farmhouse design. That includes gable roofs with dormers. The exteriors are white in a neutral palette with very clean lines. There will be many large windows to bring in those views from outside. The semi-attached units would be broken up, so none of the buildings would look out of scale with the rest of the site context. The mass is broken up, so the facade would be stepped where the units are joined. And again, the roof dormers then would help break up those roof lines. Open floor plans would be throughout all of the units. So right now, we're looking at an example of in the active adult neighborhood. This is a 2-bedroom semi-attached unit. The entry porch around the side, the trellis would lead into a larger open space. They would have a primary bedroom toward the back and a smaller bedroom towards the front. And if we can take a look at the next slide, please. So similar in the active adult, the footprint would be similar, and then just by popping up some dormers in the roof, you would get an additional primary bedroom on the second floor. So you'd have 2 primary bedrooms in this unit, which is unique. Next slide, please. So that middle neighborhood, the next gen housing, so this again would have a primary suite on the main level, additional bedrooms upstairs, and there'd be a dedicated space for that extended family. Next slide, please. So then in the young family neighborhood, this would be an example here of the 3-bedroom. You can see the middle unit steps back a little bit, and the roof is rotated to break up that overall roof line. So this is actually, you're looking at three units here, each 3 bedrooms for young families. And then the next slide, please. Standalone 3-bedroom in the young family community, and you can just see, same feel, clean lines. The mudroom would separate the garage and the main structure of the house, but similar, clean lines and very more traditional design here. And then the last slide, please. I'll turn it over to Joe, who can walk through some of the site features.
Good evening again. For the record, Joe Modaferri with JMC, Civil Engineers, Landscape Architects, Site Planners for the project. What you're looking at here is an aerial exhibit of the site. As Anthony had mentioned, it's about 150 or so acres, located on the south side of Route 216, which is across the bottom of the page there. And then on the south side of the site itself and on the west side of the site, it's, Nathan mentioned that you have a nice wide open space, not encumbered by wetlands, but we do have some wetlands bordering the edges of our site, which were flagged in 2018 and confirmed by the DEC in 2018. So there was another project in front of you, I think, at that time. So we do have that. But, as you look at this, you can see that, a bulk of the site, most of the site, and even areas within the wetland buffer, which is that magenta line you can sort of see in that aerial view, has been previously disturbed. We're looking to, as you saw from the site plan, which is on the chair here, and you saw on the screen before, that we're trying to stay within that area and even reduce that disturbance and, improve along the wetlands and the wetland buffer as we're working to develop this plan. It will be consistent with the area where we have single-family residential to the west, and we have the town of Beekman to the east. It's, as I said, again, it was previously disturbed, and we're just trying to stay within that area. And we're going to be looking forward to working with you through this and show you the plans as we develop them. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Anthony to close out our presentation.
So, unlike probably most applicants that come before you, me being one of them, we're not asking for anything tonight. We're just asking we were just grateful to have the chance to show you what we're working on. I think going forward, if not being too presumptuous, we look forward to working with town staff and getting a little bit of feedback, the building department, getting some insight from them, and then putting together a CRD plan submission and potential site plan applications to go with it. So that's what we're working on now, including some of the environmental documents for seeker to include those materials as well. We're here. If there's anything you'd like to share with us, great. If not, that's okay too.
How close does the rail trail go behind the property there?
It's behind the adjacent property.
It's behind the adjacent property, so it doesn't
It doesn't abut us.
Doesn't abut you, okay. So I was thinking that might be neat to tie in access to that from there, but
How would you get there?
You have to drive around.
You drive, okay.
yeah, you'd have to go out to the South Greenhaven Road
Unless
one,
we
I
could
would
work
guess.
out with our butter, in access.
We don't control it though.
What's the status of utilities there? Sewer and water?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have been working some with the town and ourselves with our consultants. We are drilling some test wells on the site and working with the town, looking at some sewer options as well. But again, those are so preliminary, obviously we need both of those to have a project. So, if we can't figure that out, we won't be back here, I guess. But
Gotcha.
So we're crossing our fingers and very confident that we'll figure that out and continue to work with your staff and consultants for sure. So.
And the site will contain no commercial property at all, or?
Yeah, so if you see,
So that lower portion right there, that the little hands going around right there with some help, there is commercial proposed on the plan.
Right.
But we know that there's a site down the street that has some commercial that's not doing very well. And when we met initially with the town, there was talk about other amenities, recreational or whatever, that might be beneficial to us and the residents of the town. So we're looking at various options to fill that space, whether it's commercial or a mix of that, recreational,
I only point to I don't know if you're familiar with the project, but like Eastdale Village up in Poughkeepsie, they have a blended use where they have encompassed some really nice retail type activity, more restaurants and stuff, a couple little shops, but it's like a blended use plan, probably a bit larger than this, but I don't know what the zoning allows or does not allow, or,
1%.
Yeah, the intention is I think, to keep that minimal. And I think the plan is to it be a use that's supported by the project. In other words, it's a personal service or some type of retail that the people that will be living there will be able to support.
So the pool areas and stuff, will they have like a clubhouse?
There are two clubhouses, one
One
just
at
for
each.
the active adult and one for the other two communities.
And they'll have some type of amenities, like maybe a gymnasium or something of that nature, or gathering area?
Oh, there are areas that right now just shown as green, so we definitely could add those. This is the preliminary plan.
I think the idea is, basketball courts, playground.
We have tennis courts, we have basketball courts. You're talking more like an actual park with gazebos.
No,
I think he was
talking
asking
like a
about
lot of
within
these
the clubhouse.
communities have like a clubhouse amenity.
Yeah, no, and the clubhouse, because of the way the world is today, the clubhouse would have a business center, would have things that, people who work either partially at home or fully at home, could leave their house and
Sit somewhere with internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great.
How do you typically phase something like this with the construction? Do you start with the active adult, or do you start with the?
That's a tough goal. It's hard. If you ask me which I think, well, again, assuming we get all three approved, you could start three simultaneously. I don't know that there's any advantage in starting one over the other. I think there's tremendous demand for each one of those. You know.
I think you had mentioned in our preliminary that these would all be private roads.
Yes.
That stands, right? Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any concept of what the cost of each house will be? Range?
If you're building today, you know,
Conservatively.
Butler was at 1,700, it went down to 400, it stayed there for a while, and in 1 month went back to 1,200 or 1,300.
I think one way to answer that is that there's a variety for that purpose, to sort of hit different levels. There's also affordable units that are included pursuant to the code and the way that the units have been laid out now. So I think the only way to answer it accurately at the moment is there's a variety of income levels for the housing, but I don't think there's an actual.
And that's true in each community. In the active adult, they're standalone active adult, they're duplex, and in the back, something that could have a very reasonable price, we have triplex units. You know, they're 1,200 square feet, 3 to a building, you know, and that price would be dramatically lower than a standalone.
Sure.
You know, and the same thing is true in the starter homes. The starter homes have singles, duplexes, and triplexes. Because you can sell a triplex at a much more reasonable price. And even in the next gen, there would be 3 bedrooms with the apartment or 4 bedrooms with the apartment. You know, it's hard to predict. But I think here there is a possibility. It's not a project where everything has to be, you know, a 4 or 5 bedroom McMansion.
Sure. So the goal would be more toward affordability versus just.
Yeah, there are more units
huge and
here
high
that I
end.
would call, besides the 20 or so at least, that would be actual affordable units. You know, what I've laid out here, there are a lot of units that would be at the lower end of the spectrum in housing. Unfortunately, there's nothing you can build today to be what you call really affordable. But those triplex seniors, those are great units. They're 1,200 square feet. You know, in Manhattan, 1,200 square feet is a luxury apartment. And you're talking about a senior, which is either one or 2 people, 1,200 square feet with a 1-car garage. That's a great house.
I'm wondering, have you done a similar project to this with the 3 different housing concepts?
Never found. I did many active adult, but the biggest was about 165 units in Berlin, Connecticut. But typically, again, you don't like to mix active adult. Here, because we have the size, we have the active adult, but the roads don't connect. It has its own private entrance. In typical projects, I know Toll Brothers has a huge project in Danbury called Remington. It's very successful. It's almost sold out now, about 1,000 units. And I spoke to the developer, and they did mix the clubhouses and the pools, both for the active adult section, and that doesn't work. We have the size here that you can have dedicated amenities for seniors. You know, that's the beauty of the site, and the CRD allows two units per acre. You can ask for more, but we're not asking for more. So we're very happy if we had this. And this really, I think if you look around, there is no such project. This is what's called in the industry today resort residential. You know, it's as if you're going down to a resort in Florida. You're not going to have much more amenities than what you see here. But again, since we've maxed out the houses, we used everything else for the amenities. Why not?
So we'll probably be calling you pretty soon. Is that
Excellent, yes. Very interesting project.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I see this as being very potentially great for the town.
Well, we appreciate that, and again, we appreciate the time tonight and the extra 5 or so minutes to get connected when we started, so thank you very much.
Thank you, we look forward to seeing you again.
Look forward to seeing you as well.
Thank you.
Good evening.
I'm not sure what's going on.
So, that being
Strange. Thank you.
the last item on the agenda, if there's no further business to come before the board, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thanks, everybody.